One day, Percy arrived at the quarry to collect some stone for his freight cars. Snow and frost lay everywhere. There was not a sound to be heard. Percy ventured further. He found Mavis, the new diesel engine, resting in the shelter of some rocks. "Cheer up, Mavis," he whistled. Mavis was still remembering the trouble she'd had with cars. "Manager says I don't listen to advice. He says I've no business jauntering down Toby's line. Toby's a fusspot." "Toby has forgotten more about freight cars than you will ever know," replied Percy. "You must put the cars where he wants them. Then you'll be a really useful engine. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to take these stones to the harbor." Mavis liked Percy, but she still wouldn't listen to his advice. "Why shouldn't I go on Toby's line?" The siding arrangements were awkward. To put the cars where Toby wanted them, Mavis had to make several journeys. She started making a plan. "If we used the teeniest bit of Toby's line," she said to her driver, "we would save all this bother." Her driver, suspecting nothing, allowed them to go as far as the first level crossing. A few days later, the weather changed. As the snow melted, the quarry grew busy again. Some trains were so long that before leaving the cars for Toby, Mavis had to go beyond the level crossing with them. Now for her plan. She would go further down the line without it seeming her fault. "Can you keep a secret?" she asked the freight cars. "Yes, yes, yes," they chattered. "Will you bump me at the level crossing and tell no one I asked you?" The cars promised. But while Mavis was away, Toby arrived. He decided to shunt the cars himself. The cars decided to bump him anyway. They reached the level crossing and Toby's brakes came on. This was the signal for the freight cars. "On, on," they yelled. Toby was away, with the cars screaming and yelling behind him. No one realized that melted snow had turned a stream ahead into a torrent, and the bridge above it was about to collapse. The rails were now like a tightrope across the thundering water. "Stop! Stop!" cried Toby. His driver fought for control. They came nearer and nearer to the bridge. It was all or nothing now. The driver braked hard. Toby stopped, still on the rails, but with his wheels treading the tightrope over the abyss. Mavis was horrified and quickly came to the rescue. Workmen anchored Toby with ropes while she pulled the freight cars away. Then she helped Toby to safety. "I'm sorry about the cars," said Mavis. "I can't think how you managed to stop them in time." "Oh, well," said Toby, "my driver told me about circus people who walk tightropes, but I just didn't fancy doing it myself." Later, Sir Topham Hatt arrived. "A very smart piece of work," he said. "Mavis, you did well too, I hear." "It was my fault about those cars, sir," she faltered. "But if I could..." "Could what?" "Come down the line sometimes, sir. Toby says he'll show me what to do." "Certainly," replied Sir Topham Hatt, "if your manager agrees." And so it was arranged. Now Mavis is as happy as can be, and Sir Topham Hatt thinks she's really useful indeed. James is a mixed traffic engine. He can pull both freight cars and coaches. He's proud of his smart red paint, and so is his driver. Everyone says you brighten up their day, James. One morning, James whistled loudly at the other engines. Look at me. I am the smartest, most useful engine on the line. Rubbish, replied Thomas. We're all useful. Sir Topham Hatt says so, and he's head of the whole railway. You know what, James? Added Percy. What? Replied James. You're getting all puffed up. James huffed away. Later, he was still boasting. I'm the pride of the line. I saw you pulling freight cars, snorted Gordon. You're only a goods engine. I pull coaches, too. Not as much as I do. But Sir Topham Hatt has plans for me. James was only making this up, but Gordon believed him. What plans? Wait and see. Oh, dear, he thought. Now what'll I do? Thomas was shunting shining new coaches. Good morning, James. Are those coaches for me? Asked James hopefully. No, these are for Gordon's Express. I'll fetch your freight cars next. But James was going to play a trick on the other engines. Actually, Thomas, I'm taking the coaches. Sir Topham Hatt asked me to tell you. What about the cars? Asked Thomas. Give them to Gordon. Come on, Thomas, said his driver. Orders are orders. So when James's driver returned, James was coupled to the coaches and he puffed away. Thomas returned with the freight cars. And a few minutes later, Gordon arrived. Where's the express? Thomas told him about James. And so here are your cars. Gordon was very cross, and so was his driver. Wait till Sir Topham Hatt hears about this. Meanwhile, James was enjoying himself enormously. What a clever plan! What a clever plan! He chuffed. Then he saw Sir Topham Hatt. Some jokes are funny, but not this one, James. You have caused confusion. Yes, sir, said James. You will now stay in your shed until you are wanted. The other engines teased James. I wonder who'll be pulling the express today, said Gordon. I expect it'll be you, replied Henry. James is stuck in the shed for being silly. James felt sad. Next morning, he went back to work. Hello, whistled Thomas. Good to see you out and about again. I'm sorry I tricked you, said James. Are these my cars? Yes, replied Thomas kindly. They are pleased to have you back. James set off to the harbor with his train of freight cars. He bustled about all day, pushing and pulling them into place. Time to go home now, James, said his driver at last. No cars or passengers, just we two. But his driver was wrong. Excuse me, called a man. I have a meeting with Sir Topham Hatt, and I mustn't be late. May I ride back with you? Of course, replied James's driver. Then he whispered to James, This gentleman is a railway inspector. James was most impressed. He steamed along the line as smoothly and quickly as he could. Sir Topham Hatt was waiting on the platform, and the railway inspector greeted him warmly. This clever engine gave me a splendid ride. You must be proud of him. Yes, indeed. Once again, you are a really useful engine.